Hello, everyone. We're just waiting as we have more participants coming on in. Your microphones are probably muted at the moment, and that is just to help us control some of that noise in the background as you're all coming in and joining us. We will have an opportunity for questions and comments through chat, as well as perhaps we'll open up for discussion a little bit later. So for the sake of the presentation, we ask that you do keep your microphone muted. And I'm just letting more people in. So there we go.
Oh, shoot.
Super exciting that we're seeing so many people. This is great. Welcome, welcome. We're going to give it just another few seconds to see if we have some more participants before we get started.
Maria Rosa, we do. We have a couple people that are have just emailed in that I'm going to respond to.
Okay.
With the password, because a couple people are not able to get in.
I do apologize to everyone. It seems we've had an issue with the link in that usually we don't allow passwords just for this reason exactly, but the link was attached with a password. So this is our little technical difficulty as we get started. Part of the fun of doing things virtually. I say fun because there's always a lesson to be learned, eh? Just seeing here. So in the meantime, I would like to bring your attention to a feature that you have called chat. And what I'd ask you to do, if you have any questions or comments because you simply don't want to forget them along the way of the presentation, please feel free to send them to me, the host. And I will ensure that Angela gets these at the time when we are inviting questions and comments in. So you don't need to wait to the very end. I'd also like to bring your attention to a little blurb that is in the chat that we understand that things can feel uncomfortable at times, and we want to ensure that you're taken care of through this Zoom workshop. So there is the 24/7 ROC crisis line for you. And just for your information, there's also the ROC access line, which is live 9 to 5, in case any of you weren't aware that that's there. And that's to help navigate some of ROC services. Should you feel afterwards that perhaps you have a question about something that ROC has to offer, that would be the call. But the crisis line is there for you should you need it through this call or anytime. Got a few more people coming in. So I'm admitting them.
We need some background music, Maria Rosa.
Right? I'd sing, but I can't sing and talk. I'm not that talented. I'll give it a try. Maybe I'll sing the message. That's for your entertainment purposes. So we're just getting more in. Welcome everyone that's coming in. As I've mentioned, we're asking that you mute your microphone. Just for now, we will have a question and comment period a little later, and you are welcome to send me, the host, your questions and comments throughout the presentation, just so that you don't forget your thought. You don't have to wait till the end, and then I will be sure that Angela receives those. I like to bring your attention to the group chat room. This is when I feel like an airline stewardess. I like to bring your attention to the exit signs. So in this chat, you'll find some helpful information for this evening, more so the crisis line. Should you feel uncomfortable or need the crisis line at any time, ROC offers a 24/7 crisis line for you. And I put the number there. There's also the access line, not to be confused with the crisis line. And that is for ROC services. That is answered live from 9 to 5. There's also a survey that we ask, since we are so interested in your opinion. We want to make sure we're doing this the very best we can and bring you what you need. So this survey helps us navigate that. So if you could take a moment at the end before you leave to perhaps fill that out for us, that would be great. I will also be following up with an email. If anyone's joined any of our workshops, you know that's what I'll be doing. And there will be some resource information for you from tonight's workshop, as well as that survey link again, should you miss out on it tonight. I will repost the message. Thank you for that. I just received a message about my message, so I'll ensure that everyone sees what I'm talking about. Thank you for that. And we've got another person coming in. Thank you for your patience. This part always takes a few minutes to load in as we go. For those of you coming in, I've just muted your microphone. So we just ask for the presentation that you keep it muted, and we will let you know if we're going to have an open discussion when to unmute. You can communicate with me through the chat. I will repost the message for those that are just coming in about our crisis line. And as well, for those just coming in, we have a survey link that I will post in the chat. If you could please take a look at that, because your opinion matters to us as we design these workshops, especially now that we are all switching to virtual experiences here. Okay. Doesn't look like we've got anyone else waiting, so perhaps for the sake of time, we will get started.
Sounds good.
So officially welcome everyone. My name is Maria Rosa. I'm the lead volunteer for the educational workshops here with Halton Families for Families, and I'm delighted that you're able to join us virtually. Oops, sorry, train of thought was just muddled. I'm very happy to, first of all, Halton Families for Families, for those of us who don't know who we are, and this might be your first workshop, we are community collaborative, and we host workshops once a month, as well as socials 3 times a month. You can find all of this information on our website, which is on your screen, www.haltonfamiliesforfamilies.com. And we want to ensure connection within the community as a support. So we value your attendance at our workshops and socials, and we hope to give you what your family needs. So through that, we ask that you fill out a quick survey at the very end to help us keep on top of that stuff. We always find your comments very helpful. I would like to introduce to you our presenter for this evening. We have Angela Johnson, and Angela is a family therapist and psychotherapist with Reach Out Center for Kids, ROC. Should you want her information, her contact information, I will be sending that out in an email after the workshop, as well as some resource information that she has put together for us on ADHD and ADD. So without further ado, Angela, please take it away.
Maria Rosa, before Angela gets going.
That's okay.
Can we? Hi, everybody. I'm Darlene. I'm the program supervisor for the program. I just wanted as well to mention that we are going to be recording this workshop. However, just to let you know, we are not recording any of you. Maria Rosa's wonderful, beautiful face is the only one that will appear in this in this recording. When it does come to the question and answer period, if anybody does end up, we will stop the recording at that point and capture the questions and answers differently. I just wanted to put that out there. So if anybody happens to see a record button, don't panic. It is perfectly fine. We're not capturing you. We're just capturing Angela, Maria Rosa, and the contents of this presentation. That's all. There you go. Take it away,
Thank you, Darlene.
Okay, well, thanks, Maria Rosa and Darlene. I just want to say welcome also. And I also want to mention that, you know, parenting can be really tough. And if any time during this presentation you feel kind of something is, you know, triggered or some kind of emotion, please just take care of yourself. The information, like they said, will be on the YouTube channel if you miss a piece, okay? All right. So let's just go to the next slide.
Sorry, Angela.
That's okay.
There you go.
So today I'm going to do top strategies for helping your child with ADHD. So these are the ones that I typically do first when a family comes to my office and has a child with ADHD. The first one is being informed of ADHD. The second is your parent mindset. And the third is emotion coaching. And then the fourth one is building systems. Just go to the, thanks. And this was a quote from a book that I just read. It's called The Better You Understand What is Happening in Your Child's Brain, the more effectively you can do something to influence and improve the process. So I'm going to quickly go over ADHD. So I did this because I realized that some people who are viewing this is kind of new to them. Some people that this might be, they've got this down. That's okay. So we won't spend an exhaustive amount of time. We're going to move on to more of the other three strategies. Okay, so just so you know, the hallmarks of ADHD, it's a neurological condition that interferes with a person's ability to pay attention and exercise age-appropriate inhibition. The three things that you'll typically see is inattention, impulsivity, or hyperactivity. But depending on your child, you might see more or less. Mostly inattention is the most common symptom. All right, I'm going to give you a thumbs up. So there's different subtypes, and the bottom line about the different subtypes really is each child is unique. So that's part of what we're going to do. And even as I do this presentation, and just take away from what it works for you, right? There might be some things that don't really apply to your child or your family situation. And just so my hope for you is that you will glean a few things, be able to take that into your family life, your parenting, and help you be more effective as a parent. Okay. So the real thing that it impacts is this part of your brain, which holds your executive functioning system. Okay, different parts. And those, you can see a little acronym. This is from Dr. Brown. But basically it affects memory, short-term memory and working memory. And working memory is your ability to hold a number of things in your head and manipulate them. So think about math. That's where it tends to show up a lot, is math. But it also might show up in a set of instructions, right? Is the ability to take several instructions and be able to follow it through. And kids with ADHD often have difficulty with that. Activation, this is your ability to prioritize something, organize something, and initiate. Focus, this is ability to focus, but it's also sustaining your focus and being able to shift your focus when you need to. Kids with ADHD often have difficulty with that shifting piece, making transitions, you know, moving their focus from one thing to another. And you kind of see this a lot in schoolwork where they have to be able to do that. Effort, you see difficulty sometimes in initiating and sustaining effort. And then emotions, difficulty inhibiting or regulating feelings in the moment. And I'll talk more about that as we go on. And finally, action, so the ability to kind of sustain that. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Hyperactivity might look a little like finding it hard to sit still, especially when you're younger, constantly moving as if powered by a motor, talking too much or too quickly. You might see that as an older teen as interrupting. Am I going too fast? No, okay. No. You might see it as interrupting. And sometimes it also, as you get older, it might not look like there's power. You might see fidgeting kind of behaviors. Difficulty playing quietly, running and climbing, that's again a younger one, or overall physical physicality in play, so kind of too much hands-on, as you'll hear in school, not knowing the boundaries between how close to stand to somebody or how hard that they actually might use force if they're younger. But that might look the similar when they're older. Okay.
Oops, sorry.
Impulsivity. This is like blurting out things and difficulty waiting turns, interrupting, intruding, taking toys without permission. Again, younger, but as older, when you get in your teens, it might look a little more like substance use. It might look more like wanting to try things and not being able to inhibit that, not really being able to think through the consequences of their actions as well. Hyperactivity, I talked a little bit about. It's even more kind of that constant. I think we did this one. Did we go backwards?
I think I'm having trouble with impulsivity. Sorry, there you go. I'm having trouble with, it keeps going back instead of forward.
Okay, good at the moment there. So this one's inattentiveness, and you'll see that is kind of, can be bored or spacey. It can be failing to finish things. It can be jumping from one activity to another too quickly. Sometimes you'll see that with kids where it's like they feel like they have a really short attention span, because they do. And then easily distracted from a task. And so that's kind of the joke, you know, squirrel, something kind of popped up and they're now on to that. You'll often hear that even when they talk, they'll jump from one subject to another if they're particularly chatty. Not all kids are. And so those are some of the traits that you might see. Who can diagnose this? Okay, a pediatrician, a child psychiatrist, a psychologist if they're doing a full psychological, psychoeducational is what they call it, assessment, family doctor if that happens to be their special interest. Just keep going. Typically you'll see that it has an onset at 7. Sometimes it's a bit later, but that you'll typically see it all the way through their childhood into their adolescence. They must show the same condition in all areas of their life. So if they only show this at home but not at school, then that's probably something you have to look at because it's inconsistent. But typically they're pretty consistent, and it's consistent across time and across environments. So when is it not ADHD? So this sometimes is where people get a bit confused, understandably, because sometimes children that have experienced significant trauma might also look spacey, have difficulty with attention because they're thinking about the trauma, and so they can appear the same way, or they might look anxious. A child with anxiety similarly can have similar traits of being fidgety or impulsive or kind of moving from thing to thing, but it would be anxiety. If there's things like marital conflict or violence, or if there's disruption in the parent-child relationship, all of those things can also cause similar symptoms. So these things have to be checked out first before something is kind of diagnosed as ADHD. The other thing that's interesting about ADHD is it can have coexisting disorders. Oppositional defiant disorder or conduct disorder. We're going to probably talk about that in 2 months. Anxiety, depressive mood disorders can look similar. Sensory issues, so that's children that have maybe difficulty with textures in their mouth or tags on their clothing or sounds or lights, those kinds of things. You'll see some of that coming up. Tourette's. So there's a similar in Tourette's. There's also a difficulty inhibiting certain behaviors. Asperger's, which is now, and this is obviously older, is now called ASD, but that's high functioning autism. OCD, okay. Some learning disabilities go with it also, and neurofibromatosis. So the treatment is usually some form of medication. I'm not going to talk a lot about that today because that's not my expertise. That's a psychiatrist's expertise. But medication is often a part of the treatment because it helps kids that are usually a stimulant, and it helps children and adolescents and adults basically be able to use their executive functioning skills for longer, more consistently. One of the things I often talk about is it's kind of like a light switch. It's not that they don't have the ability to pay attention. It's not that they can't access sometimes their executive functioning skills. It's just that they're not reliable for them. So they're inconsistent. Sometimes as soon as something is not stimulating enough for them or not interesting enough, that's a way for stimulation. Then they might just have difficulty accessing that. Or if they're, and we're going to talk a little bit about, if they're very emotional, they might have difficulty accessing those. So psychotherapy is also part of the treatment, and it can help with family adjustment, parent training, education, which is what we're doing today, strategies for home and school, some more specific, tailored to you and your family, social skills, because often kids with ADHD have difficulty with social skills, and issues related to the stigma of medication, because some kids really they don't want to take medication, or families don't feel good about medication. So that's a lot that they have to work through. The other one that I would add at this time was coaching. So there are something called ADHD coaches out there, and they can often give personalized assistance to help parents, children implement specific strategies to become more effective. So one of the things, the working assumptions here is ADHD is a brain-based difference. So no one causes it, parents don't cause it, kids don't cause it. We really don't know, but we do know it has a high genetic component. So often there's a parent or a family member with ADHD. This is my favorite one that I got from Stuart Albion, is children do well if they can. And the idea of that is your child can do well if they're set up for success. Children with ADHD have many gifts to bring to the world. One of them is humor. Some of the biggest comedians have ADHD. And part of the reason they're so funny is because they can make really interesting connections. Their brains make unusual connections, and that's what makes it funny. Okay, strategy number 2. So once you're really informed, and being informed is a process. So take what you can from this today, add to your knowledge, and keep going. I got really interested in ADHD. I forgot to talk about that at the beginning, but I got interested in it because there were several family members that had ADHD, and I had a child with ADHD. So along the way, I have just continually read and got more information because of my wanting to help my child. So strategy 2 is your parent mindset. And I'm going to start with parents do well if they can. You know, parents want the best for their children. And just the fact that you're on this, getting more information tells me already that you want the best for your child. So that's where we're going to start. And one of the questions was, are you informed? So we just went through that. And I just want you to know that on the average, Dr. Russell Barkley, who has some really good YouTube videos on this, if you want to dive deep, says that ADHD children are about 30% behind developmentally than their peers. So if you think 30%, oftentimes you just need to think like a 3-year lag. So emotionally, socially, and just even attention, they might be lagging by about 3 years, depending on the age, obviously. I want you to just think about, do you or your partner have ADHD? Because that can impact it too. If you're having a difficult time prioritizing, organizing, this could be challenging. Just take it one piece at a time is my advice. And this, just so you know, parenting a child with ADHD requires advanced caregiving skills. So don't be hard on yourself if you're thinking, I should be able to do this, I should know how to do this. No. This is not typical parenting. It is advanced parenting skills. Okay, so parent mindset. The first thing I want you to think about is radical acceptance. So radical acceptance is when you look at things squarely in the eye and you're like, it is what it is. So the reason I would say that is often parents have difficulty with this. It's hard to think that your child has something that might give them difficulty in life or impair them or make it more challenging for them. And so it's hard to just accept, no, this is what they're dealing with. And because once you radically accept it, you can now start to shift your expectations of your child. And just in shifting your expectations, you can relieve a lot of stress on yourself and on them. The second thing I would say is intentional connection building, positive parenting, you know, kind of starting from the place of the relationship. And we're going to talk a little bit more in the next slide. So starting from the point of relationship first. Again, what I was talking about is advanced caregiving skills. Getting those advanced caregiving skills is the strategy number 3. And finally, not strategy, parent mindset. And then finally, the last one is a plan for your own self-care and couple care, right? It's kind of like that idea, mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. And really what that means is if mom and dad are not doing well, it's difficult to do the advanced parenting. So please think about how to take care of your own needs. And if there's something you need help with, go get the help too, so that you can be the best parent you can be, okay? And there are some interesting, if you think you're a parent with ADHD, there are some interesting workshops and availability for parenting with ADHD. I really like this. I've got it on my handout, which is Attitude Magazine, has all sorts of simple articles that are very helpful that you can just get on your email. Okay. All right, let's start with intentional connection. So if you think about intentional, it's like a planned, this is a value and a priority in your life. And so if you prioritize the relationship with your child, it's going to feel like connection feels like positive regard, delight. And if you think about delight, that's like when your child comes in the room, do you light up? Are you, in a sense, thrilled on some level to have them? And sometimes with a child with ADHD, we're feeling frustrated. That's difficult to do. And so you got to cultivate it. You got to look at the things you really enjoy about your child. Belonging. They need to feel like they belong. And sometimes that's hard for kids with ADHD because oftentimes they don't do they have difficulty with social interactions at times, not always. And they end up feeling this sense of negative responses from peers and sometimes teachers and other adults. And so they need that sense of belonging in their family. They need that support, care, and love, obviously. A focus on their strengths and successes rather on the times that they might not get it or miss it. So keeping that focus. What are they good? What do you enjoy about them? What's their kind of the things they bring to life, right? Internal connection means that your children feel like intentional connection is that they have someone in their corner. Especially when things are not going well. This is important for children with ADHD because they often feel like their strengths are missed and the focus is on what they're not doing or what they're doing too much of or what they're failing at. One of the things I was thinking of was Jim Carrey, who also has ADHD. And one of the things one of his teachers did when he was younger was she said to him, she gave him a little motivation. If you can kind of follow the day, stay with us, you know, and what we're learning, I'll give you the last 10 minutes of the class to be able to do your kind of little stand-up comedy. And that's how we started, was in the class. Okay. How are we doing? Take a deep breath. I think I went through a lot of that fast. Okay, here we go. All right, so this is the positive communication, or another way to say it is emotion coaching. Now, I'll tell you that I'm going to go through how to do this very briefly, but I will tell you that Rock is on the verge of offering quite a bit of like a more intense, not intense isn't the right, more practical, but lots of workshops on emotion coaching because we see it as so important and such a valuable skill to parents. So the first thing, the reason why we think it's a valuable skill is because often you have to deal with the emotions for your children to have a sense of connection with you. and then be able to take care of the behaviors. But that's the process, is we got to deal with the emotions first, attend to the emotions, be in tune with the emotions of your child in order for us to have that connection and be able to then deal with the behavioral issues or the behavioral challenges that they're having. So the first thing is name it to tame it. So that makes it simple, which kind of means if you can name the emotion, you can name the experience, you can name the situation, you've already started taming it. The number 2 is validate and provide empathy. Validation is basically just a sense of you saying, hey, I totally understand why this might be happening to you because, you know, this was really hard for you. You really struggle in math, and so it must have been frustrating to try to finish that assignment your teacher gave you. We want to do it without judgment. We want to recognize how this might have happened. And we also want to particularly look at how does their ADHD brain affect the functioning in that situation. So maybe was it something that, you know, that part of they weren't able to remember that. They weren't able to, they forgot. There's a lot of forgetting that happens. They forgot their book from school. They forgot their homework. They didn't write that down. Things like that. We have to recognize that that's part of ADHD and to really understand and provide empathy that they may have really wanted to remember that and they just couldn't. Provide emotional support. And that's really that sense of, again, having their back, saying we're in this together, you're not alone, because that's often how they feel, like they're having to navigate the world alone. And then the next thing you want to do is once you've got them calmed down by naming the emotions and validating, providing empathy, then you're able to kind of say, let's think about how we could do that next time, right? Maybe there's a system or a strategy that could assist them. Maybe they aren't able to do that and they need some outside help from an adult. And they might also need to learn how to repair. If it's a social piece, they might need to learn how to repair things with their friends. Okay. So I have this picture of the brain. I do know that in the last video, I think Darlene and that Halton Families for Families did, there was a great description right in the middle of it about the brain and the emotion. So I'm not going to repeat all that, but I'm going to do a little bit of it, okay? So you have 3 sections of your brain, okay? In this simple diagram, we think about your lower brain, your more primal brain as the downstairs brain, and that's the part that lets us, that's kind of our safety piece. It also dictates a lot of our body stuff, but the bodily functions, but it's also a lot of where our fight and flight are. It's the part that keeps us safe, right? And then this part, what I was talking about, the executive functioning skills, that's kind of our upside brain, our top of our brain, or upstairs brain. That's when we're able to rationalize, we're able to think something through, and to think. Now, I just have to say a caution, because ADHD brains often have difficulty with that, but if they're calm and if they're in a good state, often they can think through things. They can make better decisions. They can control their emotions a bit better once we do a lot more of the emotion coaching. They can be empathetic and they can be self-aware. So, challenge is, if you're in fight or flight response and you're in the downstairs part of your brain, you're not able to do any of those functions of the upstairs brain. So if you're feeling like your teacher doesn't like you, or your parents are mad at you, or you forgot something that people are going to get upset with you, or you couldn't remember the instructions that you were given, you might end up in the downstairs part of your brain. Or, we'll talk a bit later, is that kids with ADHD can be really emotionally sensitive at times. And so they're in their downstairs brain when they're really upset about something. If there was something that didn't go quite right, or they were hurt by something, you might see that. So we really have to work at calming their brains down so they can use the more problem-solving part of their brain. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, is just to think about that. And like I said in the last video for the PSN, there was a great section in the middle that explained that in more detail. Okay. So I talked a little bit about this, emotions and the ADHD brain. So this sometimes does not show the diagnostic piece, but it's becoming more and more recognized that kids with ADHD often have difficulty with emotion regulation to start with. And part of that creates frequent struggles with parents and kids. So you really want to teach self-regulation, helping them regulate by co-regulating their feelings, which means doing that emotion coaching that I just talked about, being able to help them identify feelings, being able to help them make connections between their feelings and their actions. So these are some things that you can do. Children with ADHD, like I said, can have quick reactions. They can be overly sensitive. If you're nodding your head, I can't see you, but if that's right, you're recognizing that. They can also have sensory issues, which also can cause them to be, maybe have a meltdown or be upset. They can be easily overwhelmed, even quiet. Like, not all ADHD kids are kind of very overt, especially if they get older. Girls especially, you might not see this in early ages because they often are able to, let's say, they might be able to kind of follow the social rules a little bit better, or they might have anxiety, which gets them following them because they're afraid of not getting something right or not pleasing a teacher or a parent. So sometimes you might miss it. But the overwhelmness seems to be something that I commonly come across, but sometimes it's not easy to see. And it's really when I slow kids down and really talk through exactly what kind of happened before something got them upset and be able to work through that I really start to understand that one of the primary things that might get kids being upset is that feeling of overwhelmed. It can often get them not doing homework, schoolwork. You sometimes might see shutdown, or you might see like acting out. And it's that or avoidance. You might see a lot of avoidance because they're avoiding that overwhelmed feeling when it's too much, too big, and their poor brains cannot prioritize it, organize it, or figure out where do they start. And interoception is a new kind of idea, but it's the idea of your internal signals, both conscious and unconscious. And sometimes with kids with ADHD, their interoception is very loud. And what I mean by that is what's going on inside them is really loud, and it can take them off track. And it could be as simple as, like I was saying, they could be struggling with textures in their mouth to eat and you don't know what it is, right? It could be they're struggling with what's going on both physically and emotionally and, unconsciously. And so it's sometimes so loud that they're not paying attention to what's going on around them. Okay. All right, proactive. I talked about emotion coaching in the middle, and like I said, Rock's going to start offering a lot of these webinars, so look out for them on the Rock events. But proactive emotion coaching is starting before you get to those meltdowns, and that's the idea of teaching breathing, mindfulness, and meditation. Now, meditation in the sense of what I'm thinking about, and mindfulness, where you try for something like, teach breathing, and you get children to focus on their breath. And when their minds wander, they come back and focus on their breath. And when they wander again, they come back and focus on their breath. That's actually really helpful for kids with ADHD. There's been lots of experiments with that, about teaching them how to get their brains back on target. The biofeedback that you hear about, that's a lot of the similar concept of playing games, and it actually helps kids refocus their attention and train their attention and their focus. Breathing is also really helpful for managing anxiety and for helping you to get in touch with your body and your bodily symptoms. So that's something I just recommend to everybody, is just I'll teach them how to breathe, because that's a big piece of bringing down your heart rate and bringing down those stress hormones and being able to calm down. Exercise So regular exercise really helps calm the mind and the body. So if your child's having trouble going to sleep at night because sleep issues, I didn't mention it here, but they do often go with ADHD. And that's because they have difficulty down regulating. So sometimes kids with ADHD have difficulty getting their system going, and they have difficulty getting their system relaxed. Okay, and so at night, and if you add anxiety on top of that, maybe they're anxious about what they didn't get done usually, or they're anxious about what their friends might be like tomorrow, you could get the double whammy of having difficulty going to sleep. So that's also something you can talk to your doctor about. But something like exercising regularly really does help. And it even helps kids with ADHD often become more focused. So they've done studies that show if a child or a teen, they were doing them even at Bishop Redding a while ago, they were having a class where they would get the kids to exercise before they started doing their schoolwork and seeing what the difference was. And what they noticed is when you did something physical right before you had to do something, say, more brain focused, they were much more focused. So that's something you could put even in these days of COVID, where we're all at home and we're all trying to teach our own kids. And I just feel for you that if you're trying to teach your own kids right now and keep them on track, just to remember that exercise is really helpful, and it can just be in short bursts. So like do something physical, do a calming thing, then focus on some work, and then chunk it out. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Okay, teach emotional intelligence. Name feelings, guess them if you have to, but really help them, because sometimes kids with ADHD just kind of, like I said, on some things are like their interoception can be really loud, but sometimes knowing what they're feeling or thinking, they're not very well developed on that. So they need a lot of help with that, and becoming aware of them, become frustrated, angry, and what came before that. What was the little thing that happened before that? Because often when I talk to kids, they'll be like, I don't know, nothing happened. Well, that's not true. Something did happen. Their friend said something. They forgot something. Their teacher said something. Something didn't go the way they thought it was going to go. And also help them be aware of what gets them happy. That's a thing that in our culture, sometimes people don't really know what are the things that really bring me joy and really bring me happiness, or what are the situations in my life or the people in my life that do that. And that's a way to start cultivating happiness, gratitude, those kinds of things. And then I was thinking about this code word. I found this little idea in a book, and that was really trying to come up with code words that might shorten your, what I'm trying to say here. They kind of shorten your speech, so you don't actually have to come out and say the whole thing. And so this one, rope, that's like a code word for I'm getting to the end of my rope. Okay, just give me a second. I lost my spot. Let's just see another code word here. Okay, so another one would be broccoli ice cream. So that means someone is hangry and is losing their ability to cope. Or bubble gum. That one means brace yourself. You might not like what I'm about to tell you. So these are just a few examples of how you could use a code word to get to that thing without having that icky conversation about the whole thing. Okay. All right. And this is strategy number 4. So children with ADHD often need what I call as an outside brain. They really do need that help, especially younger, even into teens. They need that help because there's just parts of their brain that they're really having difficulty getting in motion, working with. So one of the things I would say is building systems. So systems are a way of managing day-to-day activities. If you can create systems, and what I mean is like systems, they often are called routines, but I'm using systems for how you go from getting out of bed to getting out the door for school, or starting school in this time. Bedtime routines, but it can even be as simple as what is our homework system? How do we keep track of everything? What is our system for that? It can be meals, right? That we all, how do we all help with making meals? What is the system for that? The more you have some systems with kids with ADHD brain, the more automatic, if they do them over time enough, the more automatic it is, and the less number of decisions they have to make. So kids with ADHD often get decision fatigue. If they are required to make too many decisions, they can get fatigued, frustrated, overwhelmed. And what I mean by is even simple decisions of whether I'm going to brush my teeth or not. So if they have a system and they know what it is and they know exactly what they're supposed to do, and you take some time to train them, then eventually that becomes just commonplace and they don't think about it. And that's one less decision. Think about how you get out of bed in the morning. So most of you are able to probably get out of bed, get going, get dressed, do the things, get out the door, go to work, right? That's a system. You know what the order is. You're not having to make that decision every day of whether I'm going to get dressed, right? It increases predictability. It keeps expectations clear. And children with ADHD need very clear expectations. They need to know where the lines are. And expect them to test them. Just expect that, because they're going to test the lines. They're going to test them. They're going to test them over. They're going to basically say to you, are you sure? Are you sure that this is what we're doing today? And they're going to do things that are so frustrating. Like if you have a day off for some reason, or the weather changed, or something happened and they're sick, for example, sick's a good one, and you change the routine. These are the kids that will say, well, that's the new routine. And you have to go back to the original routine and have the patience to do that, because that's what they will do. So expect that. Instead of waiting and being frustrated, just expect that whatever limit, whatever routine you put in, they will challenge it. They will say, are you sure? Are you sure I can't just play 5 minutes longer? Are you sure I can't just stay in the bathroom and play with the toothpaste till 5 minutes longer? So just expect that, right? And as long as you're clear and predictable, they will come around, they will realize. I asked my teenage son once about, he used to, when he was younger, ask me repeatedly for things. I used to call it the dog on the bone thing. Can I have it? 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 Are you sure we can't go? That kind of thing. And when he got older, he stopped doing it. And I said to him, oh, does that not happen anymore? Like you don't think about things you want? He goes, oh no, they happen all the time in my head. I'm constantly, but I know now when you say no, it isn't happening. And so it's calming for him. It's literally calming for him, because otherwise he can get pretty anxious about the idea that if he just asks enough time, he can get whatever that thing is. And he thinks if he gets that thing, he's going to make him happier. And we all know that's not true. But they can really get caught up in that. I used to have a little guy came into my office, and it was like every time he came in, he would just get a reward. His mom was really good. He'd have a whole reward system, and he just had earned the reward. He was already thinking about what the next reward was and how he could get that nap. Like he couldn't even hold it for like 2 seconds. Like, I just got the watch. That's why I'm pointing. He got a watch once, and he just got the watch. And I was like, can we enjoy the watch? No, I need the blah, blah, blah. So just so you know, that's part of how their brain works. I know it can be annoying, but it just is, if you're predictable and you're firm, and then you plan those out, they will learn. They will learn that, yeah, nope. And they will learn to inhibit that response a bit more as they get older. Okay. So systems, a daily schedule. This is a daily schedule, and look at how pretty it is. I got this off the internet. There was a COVID one, which I really liked, because it included like, Zoom calls with grandma, or Facebook calls with grandma, and it included like different kind of breaks. And it also included a lot of physical stuff, like here's where we're going to go for a walk, and then we're going to sit down and do our academic time. And it also had academic time paired up with parent working time. So there's lots of those on the internet if you want to look, but just having it and having it visual can save you a lot of stress, because what you can do, and even those routines being visual, because kids often with ADHD, I don't know why, but they tend to be more visual learners. Not always. A lot of them are very tactile learners. So having that up somewhere so that they can look at it. When they come to you at, say, 11 o'clock, what am I doing now? What am I doing now? You can say, oh, go look on the schedule. Can you go read the schedule? And then they'll say, it's creative time. And what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, what did we pick out for creative time? You have 2 choices, this or this, those kinds of things. Okay. All right, here's some tips and tricks. And then I think we're almost done, ready for questions. Make a visual, which I just said. Chunk it. I know there was some questions about learning, so chunking is a big thing. So take a task, break it down into smaller sections, and chores and learning things, that's really helpful. And then add something kind of interesting between. Give them a little bit of a break or a reward, and that, you know, something that, like, even it can be a short time on something they like play Lego for a while. If they're older, it might be a small little video game, but you have to be careful those. I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, use a token reward system. So that's something where you kind of set up like a chart, and you say, if you earn this many tokens, then you can get this, and that's for this behavior. The thing is, you've got to teach the behavior first, rehearse the behavior, the new behavior that you want, or the new system, and then put some tokens to try to keep, what you're trying to do is make it a habit, really. You're trying to incentivize it enough to make it a habit, and then you're able to extinguish the rewards and go on to whatever is the next thing. But there's lots of stuff, again, on the internet of token reward systems. Also, I saw a great webinar that Rock put out called Managing Difficult Behaviors, and she did an amazing job in showing a token reward system. Use clocks and timers. Kids with ADHD do not really understand the passage of time. They think 5 minutes is 20 minutes, and sometimes they think 20 minutes is 5 minutes. So using timers, even using timers, fun timers, like I'm gonna put the timer on, and for 15 minutes, we're gonna clean up your room as fast as we can. Okay, stuff like that. Make it fun, be creative. I remember my husband used to take the whole house and he'd say, color off the room you wanna pick up. This is when they were a little bit older, but it would just make it fun. Prepare for transitions. Kids with ADHD have difficulty often with transitions, even teenagers. So that 5-10 minute warning, especially if you want something for everybody to come for dinner, or you need them to get off the video games, whatever it is, you got to give the warning, or else you'll end up with the emotional outburst. Give instructions, use eye contact. If they're younger, get them to repeat the instruction. Give one instruction at a time. So it's like, please go do that, come back to me, and get your next instruction. Okay? And this one's an interesting, use a body double. And what a body double is another person. So it can be just another person that's doing the activity with your child. It can be you doing your work for work while they're doing their schoolwork, but you're sitting next to them and you can answer questions. You can keep them, your presence could keep them calm, and you could keep them on task. So a body double is a great thing, is pairing them up with a sibling if they can work with a sibling to do something, but usually one parent. You can use technology to stay on track. Calendar reminders, family calendars, photos of what they're supposed to do, like even a chart that has the photos of what their morning routine looks like. But use technology. There's so many things. There's apps now. Use a family calendar. I would, you know, even if they get a bit older and they all have that family calendar to keep everybody on track. And then you have to reevaluate these things regularly and tweak it until it works for your family, for your child and your family. No system is perfect, and it changes over time. And expect that your system might after a while not work, and you have to upgrade it, and it's okay. And I would say celebrate the wins, be forgiving, make each day a new day, start over, and remember that your kids can do well if they can. They will do well if they can. Okay, so we want to move to questions. All right.
I just sent out a request through chat, so I don't know if anyone has access to chat or is aware of the chat option, but that would be a good way of sending through any questions or comments at this time for Angela. This was super informative. I love the tips. Those are some really great ideas, Angela. Thank you. So if anyone has anything they would like to share as well, perhaps a story or a resource that they use, please do share that as well.